It's another Feisty Friday, and where I live on the Lekwungen and Wasanic speaking people's territory in the Songhees Nation, also known as Victoria, BC, Canada, it is raining, and this is good news because we have fires and we need rain, and it's not feeling like a summer day, but it is feeling like a soggy, wet, rainy day. And that also means that I actually don't mind sitting at my desk working, which is great because it's really important for me to get a bunch of stuff done. My life, my work, uh, I'm in a state of transition, I would say. I'm transitioning from a job that I've had for almost a decade, away from that job into lots of new roles and no official role, it looks like, right away. And it's tough when you're feisty and you're in a state of transition. I think also tough when I talk so much about change that when I find myself in it, uh, I am asking myself lots of questions that are the same questions that I get asked as a coach, and certainly as a professional that wants to support colleagues in their own change transitions. This last week, I've been thinking a lot about disruption and the courage that it takes to be a disruptor, which for me, like I've said many times and will say many times in the future, feisty or the word feisty seems to well describe partly what I consider healthy disruption. And it is, it takes a lot of courage to speak up. You ever get those emails in your inbox where you get the email and you realize, oh, I actually don't agree with most of what this says. But are you going to say anything? Do you say anything? I was writing an email this morning. I got an email and the content of the email was pretty good, but there were a few things in it that I was like, oh, I should probably speak to that. And so in my haste, I immediately sent a reply, but I didn't click send. I scheduled it, and I do this quite a bit. I scheduled the reply for within a few hours. And then I went about the rest of my day, and my morning. And I realized about an hour after I had scheduled it, oh, I think there's language in there that I don't want to use. And I think it was my ego checking in with me because my ego wants to act in those immediate responses, which is like my ego is bruised sometimes, or my ego feels charged because I'm like, I know what to do, and and so I do it. I let my ego win a little bit. I kind of let it write the email. I don't send it, but I let that out. I let the emotions flow, but I schedule it, and then that enables me to take some time to think and integrate the action without actually having acted on it, right? So the person never received the message from me that I originally wrote, but I got that out. And I think, this level of disruption is really important to try to harness as a leader because being a disruptor is a leadership skill. It's imperative that we are disruptors as leaders because as leaders, it's important for us to be seeing and thinking and critically thinking about the things that we see in front of us to help navigate where people may need us to lead them to. And so the problem I have is where do I do with my ego? Because our egos are really good. And sometimes I think, oh, I'm so tired of seeing on LinkedIn people talk about, ego in a negative way, or just assuming that when we talk about ego, it's negative. That we need to stop that. Our egos are an imperative part of who we are as humans. And I think what we're learning more and more in the neuroscience world is that we have amazing power and capability that we don't tap into because our cultural expectations kind of keep us in a box. As leaders, we need to be the ones leading the charge to think critically about ourselves and our egos and recognize, hey, these are leverageable skills, benefits. My ego, the way I automatically flare up when I read something, this is something that has power as long as I manage its disruptive level. And what that means is I take my initial belief and my emotion and I allow that to grow, but just with me. And in the midst of growing it, I also then allow myself to have my prefrontal cortex, which is my logic and reasoning, enter in. To start to think about what are the consequences of my disruptive action based on ego if I just send that out back into into the ether. If I sent that email instead of delaying and scheduling it, what would the consequences be? This is what the leaders that I work with, what we need to work on, what I'm continuing to work on. Because, if we're disrupting based on our egos, that's going to be incredibly destructive. It's also going to run the risk of creating complexity where there didn't need to be any. Because as leaders, it's important for us to balance that. And let's stop talking about ego as a negative. Let's start talking about ego as something that we need to be really aware of. And, I'm not aware of your ego. And no one else is aware of your ego. Only you can be aware of your ego. And don't be afraid to adventure into that. Because, for me, I have suffered from imposter syndrome on and off my entire professional career. I have also suffered from being able to take feedback well. But what I have learned is in the midst of growing in those areas and allowing my ego to have moments where it gets to run free, but in a safe environment where it's not hurting people, I learn a lot about myself. For instance, in this email, what I learned was I was defensive. My email response, the first one, the language I was using was because I was defending myself because I felt a little bit hurt. Now, in my initial response, I didn't have enough time to do that kind of digging and sleuthing about myself, because I was just defending myself and my ego was blinded to it. There was just like, "Rah, rah, rah, rah," and I just typed all the words. But because I didn't send it, and then I kind of had a cooling off period, I was able, excuse me, to think about how I want my words to disrupt appropriately but not offend and not also defend me and my ego. Because a defended ego as a leader, man, do we ever look weak when we do that? And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't defend ourselves. It simply means that a lot of times our ego is just the most vulnerable part. And it can immediately take offense where offense maybe wasn't even intended. And just having a bit of a cooling off time can help. So the email now I am sending has quite a bit removed from it because I realize, oh, I don't need to reiterate that point. If my ego was bruised because I thought they were implying I wasn't all that, do I really need to speak to that? Or do I just let that go? Because the truth always comes out. This is the action of figuring out how to be a disruptor, but doing it while balancing your ego. Because purposeful disruption, man, this is the change making that we all need to be doing. This is what happens when leaders recognize, you know what? We need to stop harmful patterns. We need to create space for innovation and inclusion, and we need to invite all the voices, including and especially the ones that are so frequently ignored. That's true leadership. And so for me, it's this balance. And as I talked about in my newsletter last week, how can you disrupt in a feisty way? Balancing that ego. And I think always, always, always asking yourself these questions. And the questions are pretty simple. Like, am I trying to improve the situation or am I trying to be right? My email, the first draft, was me trying to be right. Do I want or need to be right? No. Because as a leader, what I want is greatness, is goodness. And my rightness may be a part of that, or it might not be, because I still have room to grow. And also, asking myself, like, why? Why do I care so much? Why was I so upset? Because of my inside inner insecurities, which are totally normal. But I need to feel that and not just project that onto someone else. And then always, always, always think of how to do this. How do I share and disrupt without diminishing the other person? This is so important, and particularly in a polarizing political climate that we find ourselves in North America right now in 2025. What I see all the time is diminishing and devaluing people. And I'm sorry, but that amount of energy is not worth my time because I know how it feels to be diminished and devalued, and it hurts. And it leads me and it has led me to dark places. I do not want any part of leading people into dark places in their own life. I don't know their story. I may not agree with what they say, but devaluing and diminishing them just because of the words they spoke, who am I? What sort of arrogance does it take? I don't want to be that person. And I have been that person, and I continually find myself being that person. And I want that to be something that I stop because devaluing and diminishing people is an immature game. And I don't want to be an immature leader. I want to practice leadership with a sense of maturity and balancing my ego so that my feistiness really is about making great change, about being a part of change making. So that's what I was thinking about this week. I've learned a lot, like I said, even today. Slowing down that email trajectory, it helps. And it's a journey. It's not a destination. Being an amazing leader, gosh, I hope to be striving for that for the rest of my life. So anyway, that's what I'm thinking about sitting at my desk on this Friday. I trust that you are well. I trust that you are spinning your own wheels in your own ways, and perhaps something I said was helpful or insightful. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you again next Friday.